Turning points change the course of our lives, whether it's a big decision, overcoming an obstacle or tragedy, or taking a leap of faith. These stories of inspiration and resilience are what Turning Point is all about. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Turning Point. I'm your host, Priya Sam, and today I'm thrilled to speak with Dan Shaikh. Dan is the co-founder of Speaker Slam, a speaker development agency and North America's largest speaking competition. He's also the co-author of Our Yellow Brick Road, where he talks about his experience with body dysmorphia. Dan's turning point came when he had a life-changing surgery, and we're going to hear much more about that today. Welcome to Turning Point, Dan.
Thank you so much for having me, Priya. This is so exciting. I've seen the guests that you've had on your show, and I'm just honored to be amongst them.
Oh, well, I mean, we're so grateful to have you here. I think you have a story that so many people are going to really appreciate hearing today. So thank you too. And before we actually get to your turning point, I would love to hear a bit more about you. So why don't you start by telling me a bit about your family and your childhood?
Yeah, so my nationality is I'm Pakistani, and at the age of 5, my dad and my family took the risk and got us here into Canada. Actually, we started off in America, and then we kind of moved around for a while because you couldn't get jobs, and then ultimately we found Canada. And I grew up as a shy immigrant. We really didn't have any resources, and so it was really a struggle watching my dad and my family kind of go through that process. But at the end of it, it gave me the opportunity to go towards the education path, and that was really what was pushed for me, right? Like get a job in the world of banking. That was the dream ideal because that's what success looked like for immigrants, and that was for like the perfect way for me to um, get the opportunities that I've had so far is really getting past my current circumstances and this lifestyle I live now, very different. And it's all started from me just having education, which, um, you know, helped a lot.
Yeah, and I think, what you're saying is what so many children of immigrants experience, right? Your parents kind of give up everything, they come to a new country, and the reason typically is for you, the children, to have a better life. And yeah, the path there for so many is really, like you said, through education. So, did you actually study finance in your post secondary?
No, I was always interested in film and television, but that was never something that like aligned with my actual life because I just didn't think I could make something in it, right? Like, and so, but I love video editing, and so I ended up actually going into business technology management, which was IT at the time, and it was just kind of this burgeoning industry, and honestly, it was the best decision I made because it gave me access to a wealth of information before and gave me actually the advantage that I needed in the speaking world that would come to be later.
Yes. Okay. Well, you just gave us a nice teaser of where you are today and what you're up to. Take me back in time a little bit to when you started developing body dysmorphia.
Yes. Okay. So during this entire journey, I don't talk about it as much, but this the focal reason for a lot of my desire for personal development and how I ended up in the speaking world itself. Um, Most of my life I've struggled, and especially during puberty, it changed everything for me because during that period, I already didn't have English as like a way to communicate. Like I didn't have the vocabulary to communicate my feelings, and then throw on top a family situation where we're struggling financially, and it just created the right environment for hiding. And so when puberty was happening, something went wrong. And what went wrong was I developed breasts. Medically, the condition is called gynecomastia, and a lot of teen boys struggle with this. And this is something we just don't get an opportunity to talk about because it is seen as a joke and is seen as something that is um, just not worthy of sharing because it's a joke. And for me, that was my life, and my entire experience made me feel unworthy of having a place to share that, and it made me feel less than for a long time. And I chose to hide, and I wore baggy clothing. I did everything to not show up. And the best situation I could find was just don't talk. If I didn't talk, no one would notice me and I could just kind of blend into my surroundings. And I didn't uh, value myself for a long time. And it wasn't until I started looking up this issue with other men that was struggling. And that happened when I was like 19. And at that time, there was no way to know. I was like always struggling with this idea that I have to lose weight. And I would work so hard at the gym and I would never lose it. And it left me in this constant loop of like not being enough. And I was trying hard, but not um, being able to succeed. Um, but it allowed me to develop this like hardworking mentality because it was just like this constant grind of working. So body dysmorphia came in and toxic shame set in. And toxic shame just made me feel closed off from the world because it is what stops you from becoming who you're meant to be. Toxic shame really shuts you down and doesn't allow you to evolve into the person you're meant to be. And my mission right now is to help people discover that and get rid of that as soon as possible so we can move forward and become the persons that we are meant to be.
Yeah, I mean, this whole experience, especially, I think being a teenager is hard enough as it is without, any other additional factors. Everyone, I think, you talked about just staying quiet and just trying to blend in. That's what most of us want to do as teenagers, right? You don't want to be the person who stands out, who's different. You're just trying to fit in. And this condition actually caused your body to develop breasts, right? And so that was part of the reason for really trying to hide the baggy clothes and everything that you just mentioned.
Exactly. And it's one of those things that over time, I've even had conversations with other people, is things related to our body is such a um, closed off experience. We can't talk about it because we all uh, there's some sort of level of layers of denial that we can't talk about, and that part is where I want to remove the stigma around it.
Yeah. So at that time when you were going through this and really feeling isolated, how did it affect the relationships you had with your friends and your family?
Oh my god, great question. um, I just didn't talk about it with them. I was closed off, and if there was ever a mention of my body or taking off my shirt or anything of that nature, I would just shut off, leave the situation, just emotionally remove from the situation, get out. There could never be a conversation, and so I didn't have any deep relationships with people. It was very surface level, and I realized over time, being in personal development, how much of a barrier it is because in that journey, I really lived with a victim's mindset, and that victim's mindset saw things with a lens of like when someone's talking to me, I'm thinking, oh, this person is about to attack me or say something. They're all against me. They're thinking like this. And so in my family life, I didn't want to bring anything up because first off, it's a very different situation. And in our culture, we don't talk about these things. It's seen as weakness. And this is something you just hold on. And so, yeah, my relationship life was just closed off. I Vulnerability itself was not a thing that I'd be into at all. And if you see what I do now, it's shocking as to the journey that took place.
Yeah, and I'm sure one of the reasons you're able to do what you do now is because of this experience, and really, being able to kind of authentically speak about being in this place that we're kind of we're going back to right now. So, was there anyone you could talk to at this time, or was it really like you just retreated into yourself, or did you have like one person that was kind of a confidant?
Honestly, at that time, I just considered myself like, oh, it's weight. Like, my weight is the issue.
Mm.
And I denied myself that opportunity to open up with anybody. It wasn't actually until 26 or 25 that I actually had a conversation with someone, and that happened through a self development program. So until that period even happened, like I was in a couple relationships too, and that was just something that I did not want to talk about, and I did not want to own for a long time. It's just the shame of it all, like to admit it, to feel like you're you. I don't want to be labeled as this identity. It was just a part of me that I had to heal, and I realize now over time that adversity was needed in order for me to become the person I am today. Um, I went from a guy who didn't have a voice, who silenced himself, to a guy that now has a platform that gives other people a voice, and that in itself shows that sometimes your greatest adversity and your pain is meant to be there so you can go out and create something for it. So that's what my takeaway was.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talked about being 19 and kind of finally doing being able to do the research and find like the vocabulary around this condition, which is something I had never heard of until I heard your story either. So certainly not something that we hear a lot about in the media, even in like our scientific educations in school. So once you got the information, what did you decide to do, or what did you learn?
So at this point, when I watched the videos on YouTube and whatnot, and I discovered there was a surgery, and the surgery was about $8,000. And right off the bat, I disqualified myself from the idea of surgery. Just because growing up, the whole idea was you don't spend money on stuff like that. It's cosmetic. We have to save money for a down payment, and so I disqualified myself. But having seen it, I knew I wasn't alone, and yet I there was a part of me that was triggered by it because I was like, I don't want to accept this thing, but I have no choice. And so I was just left in this limbo. And for a while, I chose to run away from this new information. I was like, no, I gotta just keep working out, keep doing all these things. And I denied myself the opportunity to heal. But in turn, what I did instead was I decided to look at my life at this time, and I saw that I was living as a shy immigrant that wasn't doing much, just going home, studying. And it took one heartbreak for me to Google how to get revenge. And from there, I learned the best lesson. The best revenge is to live your best life. And so I was like, okay, how do I live my best life? And so I Googled on Reddit, and I started reading about regret. People who lived in their 60s, 70s, and sharing about their biggest life lessons. And I saw that as the roadmap to life. It was all about doing all the adventurous things while you have energy, while you're young, you don't have responsibilities, don't be set in a job and work towards entrepreneurship, and all these things I took in and sponged in. And so I made it a goal of mine to finish my bucket list by 25 and to finally live the peak experiences that I missed out while being this shy immigrant kid. And I went skydiving, and this as a guy that was like scared of heights, I became amongst my friends this guy that was adventurous all of a sudden. And I just kept doing this, flying a plane, bungee jumping, traveling solo. I even did an around the world trip. And the reason all of this stuff is important to the storyline here is externally, I was receiving all of this praise and I was doing all of these things that made me feel better. But I remember on my around the world trip and while I was in Thailand, I saw this 5 year old child on the street begging for money. And it was in that moment I remember going back to my hotel and I was all alone on this like rooftop patio in the pool. I remember crying because I realized none of the things I've done so far felt earned. It was because of my dad, because of my family's risks to take me out of Pakistan, to give me a life, to help me get a an education that allowed me to live this lifestyle and receive these peak experiences. um, and so at that moment, I realized I'm just running away from something, but I didn't know at that time. All I knew is I need to come back and do something where I help. And so I started volunteering when I came back. And in that journey of just saying yes to new opportunities, because I had built up this muscle of saying yes to things that were outside my comfort zone. Um, it was then I was invited to this event. It was a personal development seminar called Landmark, and they invited me in, and I just took a risk. My whole thought process was either I get all these amazing possibilities they say, or I have an amazing story of how I joined a cult. So it was a win-win because that's how just my mindset was now. And so when I went in and did it, it was the first time I was exposed to all of these vulnerable stories. And I got triggered because during this time I was like, y'all are talking about these stories from the past and how that impacted you, but I'm still living it. Like I'm 26 at this point and I am struggling over here and I can't go up and talk to anyone about it because they're going to look at me and they're going to start like peering at me to see what I have. And in that moment, I turned to, on the third day, I asked someone to talk to me and one of the volunteers. And for the first time in my life, I started cracking up, but I was like, I have to share this story. And I told her, this thing that happened to me at 13 and I didn't have control over it. And this happened. And the years of emotion erupted. And as I looked up after I was finished saying everything, she was in tears. And in that moment, what I had done for her was I unlocked her own um, belief about her body and something she was struggling with, but she couldn't echo out. And in turn, she shared something about her own body. And it just hit me like a ton of bricks where it was like, wow, my story unlocked this person's own story. And in turn, it wasn't just us in pain, it was almost healing because in that moment I realized, hey, this entire time I've been living with a victim's mindset. What would my life look like if I took the power back in my life? And in that situation, I took everything that I had learned so far and I was like, you know what? I've been spending all this money on traveling and doing all these bucket list goals. What if I invested the same money into the one thing that would help the inner version of me feel empowered? So I took out a loan and I got the surgery. And this surgery changed my life because it 10x my confidence. I was I felt like as a man, I was given a disadvantage and I felt like I always had to work harder than everybody and I couldn't tell anybody what was happening. So this mental burden was taken off my mind because imagine not being able to wear a t-shirt, not like every single day looking in the mirror, looking down and just questioning like, how can I hide? How can I be like, are people going to judge me? And so I always had this like loop in my voice. Once I got that surgery, it went away. And uh, what came after that was just magical.
Yeah, I mean, so this obviously is, your biggest turning point. You make this decision, you invest in this surgery. I mean, you've already said just how, that loop that had been playing in your head for, so at this point, you were 13, right? When the condition started. So then how old were you actually when you had the surgery?
So I was literally 26 at the time.
Okay.
The program might have happened a year before, but 26 was, so 10 years or so of my life was robbed in this condition, and that's a big development part of my life.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about how it impacted your confidence. So, how do you feel like you kind of were able to show up differently after you had the surgery?
Oh man! So 1 month after the bandages came off, I remember going camping with my friends, and it was the first time. People might take this for granted, but for me, it was like, first I was wearing t-shirts. The next thing was like, now, taking off the shirt in public and like just being outside. I was like, hey, nothing is wrong. Like no one's making fun of me, no nothing. And so that voice was gone. And what happened next, I think it's just amazing because I had this new sense of confidence. And I remember going to my boss because I was already underpaid because I just didn't value myself. And I told him, hey, I'm being unpaid. I brought in like a whole research thing, like this is what I should be earning. And 1 week later, after that conversation, I got a $10,000 raise, which paid for the surgery itself. And 4 months later, I started Speaker Slam with my business partner, Rena Rovanelli. And in that journey, again, I went from a guy who was hiding most of his life, um, to a guy that was now all of a sudden, within 4 months, now hosting a speaking competition where people were telling their truths. And that in itself, I may have gotten the surgery, but mentally I was still, I still had work to do. And in that time of running speaker slams on a monthly basis, I use those themes to heal myself and hear other people's stories, because each time I heard their stories, it just unlocked something inside of me.
I think so much of your story is, I think like this path you started on, you talk about being this shy kid and then, hitting puberty and having this condition that makes you, want to just hide away. And then, you get to your 20s and you complete all these items on a bucket list by 25, and then you go to Landmark, this conference that changes everything, leads to you getting this surgery. I mean, it's just such an incredible journey. And I think I love what you just said there about how then you really wanted to provide a place for other people to tell their own stories, because it's like you found this renewed joy and this new perspective and you wanted to be able to give that to other people too. Am I right? Is that what led you there?
No, for sure. But one thing I want to add is everything happened so organically, and it all happened because I just kept saying yes to things that were new experiences to me. And this mindset, where in those early 20 parts where I did those bucket list experiences, I did this challenge to myself where I did 5 new experiences a week. And in just saying yes, as time went on, when people would invite me to events, or uh, I found out about an interesting experience, I just started saying yes. And so I didn't start off with this idea that like I was going to create a speaking platform. I just said yes to opportunities when someone asked me to do something, and I was like, what, I haven't done it. I don't know what the experience is, but you know what? It's going to lead to a story. And in each moment of saying yes, it led me to my purpose. And that is what I want to leave with people is, you got to say yes to things that are outside your comfort zone, because you never know where it's going to take you. And sometimes you're just universally guided towards something. And that's what something I feel has really allowed me to live a life that I really shouldn't have been living. And it got me to this point.
Yeah. I think that's such a great takeaway from this is just to say yes. And yeah, you're right. I mean, so many good learnings and experiences come from just getting out of your comfort zone and trying something new, even if it's not the right thing every single time. I think we can all agree that you always learn something from trying something new. So I think that's such a great lesson. You've mentioned Speaker Slam a few times. Tell us like what is Speaker Slam and how did it really come to be?
Yes. So Speaker Slam is North America's largest inspirational speaking competition. We bring up 10 speakers to the stage on a theme, and these themes can vary. Sometimes it's on the theme of body beautiful, identity, overcoming adversity. And they share 5 minute speeches. And in these speeches, it's all about inspirational speaking. And what inspirational speaking is where you share your personal story with a message in order to inspire others. And it's a way for us to really connect with our audiences in an authentic way. And what I love about this is we bring in four judges that are industry leaders in where they're at, and they score the speakers on this judging criteria that we have created. And what happens is the top three speakers are selected at the end of the night. They win a cash prize and prizes donated by the judges worth over $10,000. And what ends up happening is the winners of the speaking competitions, they actually go on to compete at the Grand Slam for the title of Inspirational Speaker of the Year. And that brings together all of the best speakers of the year. And during the pandemic, we lost our entire business model. Uh, but we ended up actually, it was a blessing in disguise because we went online and we created the online speaking competition. And so now we have speakers from North America, the USA, Mexico. We've had people from Africa, Thailand, and all of these places, the speakers are competing in our competitions. And now, as we return to live events, we're bridging those worlds together. And at the last Grand Slam, which was held just in November, um, we had six speakers fly in from America to be a part of this competition. Plus, we gave away $50,000 worth of prizes, and we're just super excited to see that the vision that what we created in Toronto just as a one-off event has now become this global speaking competition, and we continue to grow, and we're really inviting speakers to jump in and start sharing their stories.
Yeah, what an incredible platform. And I mean, I love just hearing about the evolution of it too. You go from just this kind of one-off event and now all of a sudden you have this global competition that's, creating a place for people to share these inspirational stories. And then, I mean, also being able to offer that kind of prize to bring out these like top talents, I'm sure. That's pretty incredible. Like, what's the most fulfilling part about it for you?
Oh my gosh. It's the moment that people get these cathartic healing experiences, whether they win or lose. It's the fact that they shared their story. And one of the things that like I know the impact that I've had is like seeing people in my life who I've heard their stories privately, and when they decide to share that same story on my platform, it seeing the shift in their energies, because now that story is out in the open, and it's actually a cathartic healing experience for them, and it allows people to really get to know a person. And so um, just seeing the impact of people opening up and letting that story that they really haven't had a platform to do so, and being that platform, I think if we can help people become more emotionally connected to one another, I think we can change the world.
I absolutely agree. And, what a rewarding experience and such rewarding work. So thank you for sharing that. I guess I wonder too, we've gone on this whole journey through your life today, and as you look back at everything you've experienced, your biggest turning point when you had the surgery, what do you hope that others might learn from your experience?
Oh my gosh. Lean into vulnerability. Because I was really running away from exploring the PTSD, the stuff that I went through, and because I just followed this like life plan of not living with regrets, and in it led me down this path of like, hey, I have to go inwards. And when I went inwards, I changed the entire direction of my life, and I fast tracked something where it was like, hey, the earlier I started, the less I felt like I would live in regret. And for me, I want to let men especially know that, like, hey, it's better to go inwards and heal first before you start anything else, because there's a whole world of possibilities that open up when you're not being held back by something. Because it really feels like toxic shame at least feels like you're chained to a ball and you're operating at a way lesser um, manner. And so I want to release people from that toxic ball of shame. And so it's this idea that, like, go inwards, get whether it's speaking to a therapist, whether it's actually, trying something that like allows you to live outside your comfort zone, but go inwards first, because there's a lot of realm of possibilities that exist once you do.
Such great advice, and such a great life lesson that you have shared with us today. Dan, thank you so much for sharing your experience. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you after this?
You can connect with me at the Dan Shaikh, or you can find me at Speaker Slam. And I will be, if you have any questions, reach out. I'm happy to bestow my wisdom onto you.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you just for sharing everything that you shared today. It was great to have you, Dan.
Thank you, Priya. I'm so
And
excited to be here.
yeah, it was so great to have you. And thank you all for watching and listening today. If you're enjoying this show, leave us a 5-star review. We also love hearing from you. You can find me on social media at Priya Sam. Until next time, take good care of yourselves and of each other.